The first sound that woke me wasn't the wind or the familiar groan of winter settling into the house. It was the low, deliberate rumble of a diesel engine moving too slowly to be incidental. That kind of sound doesn't belong to weather. It belongs to intention. I checked the clock without sitting up.
4:38 a.m.
I'd been awake before dawn most of my adult life, long before I owned this house, long before snowplows and HOAs entered my vocabulary. Old habits from the army don't fade, they just change uniforms. You learn to listen before you move. To let patterns finish revealing themselves. The engine noise grew louder, closer, then shifted pitch as metal scraped against packed snow. I swung my legs out of bed, already knowing where to stand. By the time I reached the window overlooking the eastern boundary, the headlights were fully visible.
The plow truck paused.
Not at the road edge. Not where momentum might carry it too far.
It stopped.
Then, slowly, deliberately, the blade angled inward. I watched as chemically treated road slush, salt-heavy gray dense, was pushed several meters past the clearly staked boundary and dumped squarely onto my land. The mass of it slid forward and collapsed with a wet, crushing sound. Directly onto my storage shed. The shed had been there for years.
Permitted. Approved. Inspected.
Built to HOA specifications down to the setback distance and roof pitch. I'd kept the original approval packet in a binder in my office, because I keep everything. The plow didn't hesitate. It reversed, straightened, and drove off as if nothing had happened.
I didn't swear. I didn't rush outside.
I didn't feel the surge of anger people expect in moments like that. I reached for my phone. Photographs first.
Wide shots. Close-ups. Time-stamped.
Then video, panning slowly from the boundary marker, bright orange, GPS verified, to the crushed corner of the shed. I pulled up my handheld GPS unit, confirmed coordinates, recorded them on camera. By the time the sky began to lighten, I had a complete incident file. This wasn't my first conflict with the HOA, but it was the first time they'd crossed from annoyance into trespass. Still, I gave them the courtesy of procedure. I submitted a formal report, attached evidence, cited the covenant prohibiting dumping snow or debris onto private property. The response came 2 days later.
A template. Polite. Vague. Dismissive.
They expressed regret for weather-related inconvenience, suggested I contact my insurance provider, and assured me snow removal contractors operate under challenging conditions. No acknowledgement of the boundary. No reference to the shed.
No explanation.
That told me everything I needed to know. In the Army, you learn quickly to distinguish error from pattern. One is forgivable. The other is actionable. I sent a follow-up, attaching the covenant clause verbatim, highlighting the GPS data, asking for written confirmation that the practice would stop.
No response.
3 weeks later, the forecast predicted another heavy storm. I prepared the same way I always did, batteries charged, cameras synchronized, external drives ready.
I didn't need hope.
I needed proof. The storm came in hard just before dawn, thick flakes blown sideways by wind that cut through layers. The plow arrived on schedule. This time, there was no ambiguity. The cameras caught everything. The truck slowed at the boundary. The driver looked directly at the marker.
Adjusted the blade. Dumped the load.
The rebuilt shed, repaired temporarily, braced against further damage, collapsed again under the weight. I let the truck finish its route. Then I called the police. The officer who arrived did his job properly.
Took statements.
Reviewed footage. Noted the boundary markers. Filed the report as trespass and property damage. I gave him copies on 2 separate drives. When I brought the report to the HOA office in person, the atmosphere shifted. Complaints are easy to ignore when they're digital. Harder when they're standing in front of you with documentation. Sloan Whitmore, the board president, met me with practiced calm. She skimmed the report, nodded sympathetically, and said the words I'd expected. These things happen. She suggested mediation. Insurance again. Patience. Then, casually, she mentioned legal costs. How disputes could get expensive. How most people preferred not to escalate. I looked at her and felt nothing. That afternoon, I reviewed my options. The snow remained on my land. Chemically treated. Damaging the soil. Crushing what was left of the shed. The HOA had been notified. They had declined to act. Property law is clear about one thing: you are not required to accommodate ongoing trespass. So I exercised my rights. That night, while temperatures dropped well below freezing, I worked under floodlights. I used the very snow they dumped, combined with water, layering it deliberately, compacting it, freezing it into place. I built slowly, methodically, checking measurements every step. By morning, a wall stood where the maintenance road crossed my property.
3 feet thick. 8 feet high.
Perfectly straight. Entirely on my land. I documented its construction from start to finish.
Timestamps. Measurements.
GPS overlays.
No encroachment. No ambiguity.
The wall didn't block emergency access. It didn't violate any covenant. It simply made continued trespass impossible. And it could not be moved. The reaction was immediate. Neighbors stopped by. Asked questions.
Took photos.
Someone posted a video.
Then another.
By evening, it was everywhere. A winter standoff, framed not as spite, but as response.
Reporters called.
I declined interviews, but the footage spoke clearly enough. Snow dumped past a boundary. Repeatedly. Deliberately. The HOA statement fell apart under scrutiny. They threatened legal action. Their attorney sent a letter heavy on language, light on substance. It claimed obstruction of a community road.
It wasn't one.
The road was private.
Documented.
Their claim died quietly. The emergency meeting was anything but quiet.
People shouted.
Demanded records. Asked why complaints had been ignored. Why contracts hadn't been bid. Why Sloan had personally approved a snow removal deal that cost nearly double the regional average. Resignations followed before the meeting ended. An investigative committee formed, chaired by Mrs. Holloway, who had lived there longer than anyone else and remembered when the HOA was supposed to serve, not rule. The findings were worse than anyone expected. Financial irregularities. Tens of thousands unaccounted for.
Complaints buried.
Contractors instructed to prioritize speed over boundaries, confident the HOA would handle fallout. Depositions confirmed it. Sloan resigned before the report was released. The contract was terminated. Homeowners were compensated.
A forensic audit began.
County prosecutors reviewed the file. A new board was elected under rules that finally made transparency mandatory. Mrs. Holloway asked me to serve.
I declined.
Spring came slowly. The ice wall melted the way all things do when they're no longer needed. I removed the remaining debris, rebuilt the shed properly this time, stronger, reinforced. Along the boundary, I planted red tulips in a straight, measured line. They bloom every year now, impossible to miss. The cameras are still there. Not because I expect trouble, but because vigilance is a form of respect, for yourself, and for the line that separates cooperation from surrender.
I never wanted a fight. I wanted acknowledgement.
Boundaries matter. Rules mean nothing if they're only enforced downward. And power, when left unexamined, always overreaches. Now, the boundary isn't a battleground.
It's a garden. And that's enough.